Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A large protest is taking place along a highway west of Calgary by those who say they are fed up with the federal carbon tax. Political reporter Brian Lilly says the Prime Minister is also receiving even more backlash from premiers on the federal levy. And we hear from more local business owners who discuss how the carbon tax is impacting them.
Your nation. Your province. Your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Horns blared along the Trans-Canada Highway west of Calgary as a carbon tax protest slowed traffic to a crawl on both Monday and Tuesday. It was one of the many held across the country over Ottawa's $15 per tonne or 23% increase to the federal levy.
I'm here because our country is falling apart and our government has been running us into the ground, and this needs to stop. You know, it's not just about acts of tax, it's about the freedoms, and it's about our rights to free speech. It's about, people got to realize it's not just the one tax, it is, we are getting hit from within as well, right? So within the province. So, and it's, but the carbon tax is big. It's for me, it's, you know what, you're taking money from us, and for what? I have yet to see anything that's been done.
I'm really impressed, and we had so many people waving and shouting and blowing their horns all the way down Highway 22. Right on. It was good. I think it's only going to build. This is just the beginning. It's going to build, and there's people that are prepared to stay here as long as it takes.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, meanwhile, shot back at the 7 premiers who say they are opposed to the carbon tax. He says they would rather complain than present an alternative to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey also urged the Prime Minister to convene an emergency meeting of leaders to discuss options.
First of all, let's be clear about what's happening right now. The price on pollution is increasing along with the Canada carbon rebate. And from the very beginning, we said that this is a federal backstop. We need the entire country to reach a similar level of stringency, of ambition in fighting against climate change, both because we need everyone to do their part, but also because it has to be fair right across the country. Wouldn't be fair for one region to have to pay more than a different region, which is why we brought in a federal backstop. A number of provinces said, no, we're going to do our own system or keep up with our own system. British Columbia, Quebec, even the Northwest Territories have their own approach to pricing pollution, which is just fine. Every other province has the opportunity, if they want, to create a system that is equivalent to what BC, what Quebec, and what the federal backstop is. So all those premiers that are busy complaining about the price on pollution, but not putting forward a concrete alternative that they think would be better for their communities, are just playing politics.
Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly says economists are on the side of the Prime Minister when it comes to the federal carbon tax, a side he says is wrong.
They are not being accurate, and I've seen this from several economists. You know, one of them claiming on X that, oh no, the carbon tax isn't applied multiple times across the supply chain. Yes, it is. When the greenhouse grower is growing the vegetable, they're charged the carbon tax. When the trucker that picks it up to take it to the store picks it up or fills their tank, they're charged the carbon tax. The store has to heat parts of it, refrigerate others. They're charged the carbon tax. You take it home in your car, you're charged the carbon tax. Parliamentary Budget Officer has been clear. Most Canadians, when you consider the full impact of the carbon tax, are worse off rather than better off.
Mr. Lilly will have more reaction to the federal carbon tax increase coming up later in our program. You know, it seems as though the recent hike in the federal levy, along with the reinstatement of the Alberta provincial fuel tax, could mean more money for governments, but in turn mean less food in our bellies. BCN's Naveen Day explains why.
It's simple economics. Rising input costs lead to higher prices for consumers. And the recent 23% hike in the federal carbon tax and the reinstatement of Alberta's provincial fuel tax has become a hard pill to swallow for Alberta's producers, business owners, and consumers alike. Co-owner and pitmaster of Lethbridge barbecue joint Hickory Street, Devin Bone, says she is dreading the thought of passing the additional costs on to her customers.
I lose sleep at night worrying about how we're going to pay for everything and what my bills are going to look like next week. Literally, I look week to week at what I'm buying. I haven't done a price increase in a while, and I keep thinking that I'm going to need to, but I'm just looking at everybody who just got hit as much as I did. And I have a hard time as a mom and a small business owner being able to comfortably raise our prices, so I'm a little worried about that.
As for consumers, it's not just at the pumps where the pinch will be felt. Director of Alberta Grains and Farms David Bishop says the carbon tax hike is affecting the input costs for food producers.
We do have irrigation, and of course that affects our cost of irrigating because, of course, the power goes up with the increase in the carbon tax. Our shops that we do repairs in, they're all heated with natural gas, so we pay more there. So it hurts, and the unintended consequences are the fact that all our inputs that come into the farm, the carbon tax increase all falls on to those people that deliver all those goods and manufacture them.
And for Bone, the hiking costs is just the latest of back-to-back hurdles her business has suffered over the last 4 years.
We've only dealt with challenge after challenge. And during COVID, we literally would play the Premier's address every time he would talk, and we would listen and wait for what kind of restrictions we were going to have to deal with. And finally, when that let up, we kind of thought we were seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, so we decided to make the big move to downtown. And we move into downtown, and then we're surrounded by construction and people can't get to us. So it has been hurdle after hurdle, and now I'm looking at this going, I have to raise my prices in order just to cover my costs and my staff's wages. How can I do that and hope that people still walk through the door when I know their utility bills have gone up, their gas pump prices have gone up, everything's gone up?
The twofold tax hit is not sitting well with Albertans, some of whom have begun protests like this one in Cochrane, urging the federal government to end the carbon tax. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Jury selection has begun for 3 men charged in connection with the Coutts border blockade. Marco van Hugenbos, Alex van Herk, and Gerhard Janssen are each charged with mischief over $5,000. Dozens of supporters came out to the Lethbridge courthouse on Tuesday, offering support for the 3 who were key participants in the 2022 government protest. Some of the supporters held signs, with one stating, "Freedom is God-given, not government-given," and another had a flag with a message of one nation under God. There was even a little bit of karaoke entertainment for supporters at the courthouse.
Do you believe a freedom's done? We can feel the spirit rising up. We really do see the victory come. Do you believe in life after fear? We can feel the spirit rising up. In God we are so strong and tough.
What if that guy's available for birthday parties? By the way, the blockade over the COVID-19 pandemic health restrictions impacted Alberta's main border with the U.S. for more than 2 weeks. The trial is scheduled to run until April the 19th. Well, it was another beautiful sunny day here in Lethbridge, so nice and warm, but things are about to change with more moisture on the way. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early look at the forecast. Jeanette, it could be cooling off quite a bit over the next few days, and we may even see more snow.
Yeah, unfortunately, Hal, and after we had such a lovely day today, we were in the warm spot in Alberta earlier today. Look at that beautiful high today, 21 degrees. Even tomorrow on Wednesday, not that bad at all, 17 for a high. We are expecting a bit of moisture on Wednesday. We're looking at 30% chance of showers. But after that, let me tell you, we are expecting a cold front to move through the area, bringing with it a significant change in weather. We're looking at temperatures dropping into the minuses. We've got a multi-day snow event happening that should happen from Thursday through Sunday. Expect snowfall. So I'll be back later in the show to tell you about how much colder it is going to get.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeanette. You know, when it comes to spring seeding, a number of farmers here in southwestern Alberta have been dealing with some pretty wet conditions. David Bishop is the director of Alberta Grains and Farms out by Barons. He says even though they've received some moisture, much more is needed, especially for our reservoirs.
we're wet right now, which is good. So it's likely going to be normal seeding for us first part of May. We have another major supposedly snow event, rain event coming here the end of this week, which would be great. Hopefully we get snow in the mountains, get the snowpack built up so we can get our reservoirs filled a little better. So we can do some irrigating. You can water your lawn to keep it green. Things like that need to happen, and we need more snow in the mountains for that. We're still not out of the woods as far as a drought condition goes, but right now, you're looking out in the fields, there's water laying everywhere. It's wet, it's muddy. So that's something we haven't had for a few years. So it's looking good to start. And then after that, we'll see what happens.
Alberta government officials say they're creating a couple of new organizations that will support the development of addiction systems and mental health care. Now, one will be called Recovery Alberta and will be responsible for the delivery of mental health and addiction services. The province will also be establishing CORE, or the Canadian Centre of Recovery Excellence, to build recovery-oriented systems of care by researching best practices for recovery from around the world. Premier Daniel Smith says by collecting more data, they're in turn able to care for more vulnerable Albertans.
We want to make sure that we've got good information, testing out, looking at what the outcomes are so that we're able to do more of what works and do less of what doesn't work. So we have invested in a recovery-oriented model. We've got our first recovery community that opened in May of last year. And then the Lethbridge one opened at the end of the year. So we're just now beginning to get some results data. And since we're at the really early stage of being able to accelerate the number of people going into the program, I think it's time for us to look at the data. A virtual opioid dependency program as well, as mentioned, with Dr. Day having set it up. It's got 8,000 people on it. That also allows for us to see the extent to which that's been successful. So I think we've got a lot of data now, and we just want to make sure that we're making the best decisions to continue to support recovery.
Now, Friends of Medicare were not pleased with Tuesday's announcement by the Premier. In a released statement, officials said Alberta has the highest ever number of drug poisoning deaths last year. They said, instead of addressing the crisis, we saw the Premier use cherry-picked data in an attempt to justify their model, which continues to contribute to a staggering death toll. Now, the province also announced that it is increasing funding for family resource networks by $6.6 million over the next couple of years. Officials say this will help with access to free workshops for young parents, offer in-home supports, along with provide mentorship and life skills programming for both children and youth.
Families facing big challenges can get help early, reducing the number of children who come into government care, and families who require child intervention services. When we designed this program, we were thinking of the young expectant mother in northern rural Alberta who feels isolated from her peers and wants guidance and a helping hand to help her take on the huge responsibilities she has in front of her. And the parents in Okotoks who may live far away from family and are looking for a way to meet and find camaraderie and support from other young parents, as well as Indigenous families right here in Edmonton, who are searching for a place like Bantaro where they can connect to their culture and community.
The province says in 2022 and 2023, networks served more than 48,600 children and youth, along with 32,000 caregivers here in Alberta. Some great news for those who use Highway 41 in the southeastern part of the province. Transport Minister Devin Tereshan announced plans to widen the well-used highway. Cypress Medicine Hat MLA Justin Wright explains what sections of Highway 41 may be expanded.
And so what that's going to look like is approximately 52 kilometers from Highway 1. It ends up just going past Elkwater and Cypress Hills Provincial Park, where we are going to be having widening going on down that way, as well as 14 kilometers north of Highway 1 along Highway 41 between the 41 and 41A. That's really going to add to a lot of safety measures and concerns that have been going on down that way. Many of my constituents have had near misses, serious near misses on Highway 41, including my family. It's been something that's been very near and dear to me. I'm going to be continuing to focus on this.
Make sure you catch more of the interview with Cypress Medicine Hat MLA Justin Wright and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up in the second half of our program. Food Stash Foundation is doing its part to help feed the hungry in Vancouver. The nonprofit group opened a rescued food market back in 2021 with the hope of helping people access affordable food while minimizing food waste. Now, what began as a pay-what-you-feel system gained so much traction that it was forced to pivot to a customer lottery.
So we've shifted it in the last year. It's membership-based. You sign up for a 3-month membership. You pay $2 a week membership fee. You get an appointment time and come at the same time every Thursday for 3 months, and then we get a new cohort of folks in. We've seen a huge increase, and it's hard to say for sure. I'm sure it's attributed in part to rising food prices and inflation, but also just word of mouth. More people know about us and know about this option for accessing food in a low cost and low barrier way. So word spreads, and more people are interested in the type of work that we're doing, whether it's for environmental reasons or social reasons or just easy access to food.
Officials at Food Stash say they now serve 36 community groups in the Vancouver region. The head of Federal Elections Canada says he's spoken with political parties about whether nomination races need more rules. Stéphane Perreault warned, however, that there's little appetite to have Elections Canada regulate these contests. The ongoing Commission of Inquiry into Foreign Interference is looking at how federal candidates are nominated and whether foreign states are able to influence who ends up on the ballot.
I should say that this is not exceptional in the world, that there are very few countries that actually nominate regulate the nomination process. There are examples, but they are exceptional. It would fundamentally alter we would need to change fundamentally the way we operate. We would need returning officers permanently in each of Canada's 343 electoral districts, which does not exist now. They're nominated, but they do not operate, they do not have an office. So we would have to have a permanent capacity if we were to actually administer a nomination contest. Now, there are alternatives to that, which is the parties administer them, but they are bound by certain rules that they must. So we can explore different ways of further regulating without necessarily expanding so much the role of Elections Canada.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israeli forces had carried out an unintended strike in the Gaza Strip, which left 7 aid workers dead. The workers were helping out with the World Central Kitchen.
לצערנו ביממה האחרונה היה מקרה טרגי של פגיעה לא מכוונת של כוחותינו באנשים חפים מפשע ברצועת עזה. זה קורה במלחמה, אנחנו בודקים את זה עד תום, עומדים בקשר עם הממשלות ונעשה הכל כדי שהדבר הזה לא יישנה שוב.
U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says the 7 aid workers who were killed by an Israeli airstrike were heroes. He made the remark during a visit to Paris on Tuesday.
I spoke to Jose Andres just about a week ago about the efforts that World Central Kitchen's engaged in Gaza, as it is in many other conflict zones around the world, including in Ukraine. They have been doing extraordinary, brave work, day in, day out, and critical work to try to make sure that people in need get what they need, starting with the most basic thing of all, food. These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it. They show the best of what humanity has to offer when the going really gets tough.
Comedic legend Joe Flaherty has died. The original cast member of SCTV passed away following a brief illness. A native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Flaherty was also known for his role in the NBC series Freaks and Geeks and for being a Western Union man in Back to the Future Part 2 back in 1989. A master of sketch and improv comedy, Flaherty got his start with the Second City Troupe in Chicago before moving to Toronto in 1973 to open a new outpost here in Canada. From there, he moved over to SCTV, which debuted in 1976 alongside the likes of Eugene Levy, John Candy, Catherine O'Hara, and Andrea Martin. Now, one of his more popular characters on SCTV, outside of the vampire you're seeing right now, is when he played the series anchor on the Melonville Nightly News. Joe Flaherty was 82 years of age. You know, when you live in southwestern Alberta, you learn to dress in layers. There could be a 20-degree temperature change in a matter of hours. Jeanette Rocher is now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, it felt like summer again today, but soon it may begin to feel a lot like winter and right in the middle of spring.
Oh, yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, Hal, but look at this big weather swing that we're about to embark on here. So going from 21 today to 17 tomorrow, not so bad just yet. 30% chance of showers on Wednesday. And then we've got this cold front sweeping in through Alberta. It's going to hit Lethbridge by Wednesday night, essentially. Look at that drop in temperature from 17 down to -1. And then it doesn't get much warmer from here on out, at least for the next couple of days after that. Thursday and Friday, we're seeing a multi-day snow event from Thursday right through Saturday night, sitting at the zeros on Thursday and Friday, up to 2 on Saturday, and then looking at some showers on Sunday, but back up to the pluses, 8 degrees, and then even into the teens as we move into next Monday with a high of 13 degrees. So yeah, there we go. Average high for this time of year, 10 degrees, average low -324. That was our record high on this day back in 1992, and our record low on this day was happening back in 1954, and it was sitting at -22 on this day. Sun rose this morning at 7:04, looking at a sunset this evening at 8:06 p.m. You know what? That gives us 13 hours and 2 minutes of daylight. Look at those hours are just getting higher and higher, already into the 13-hour mark. Okay, 30% chance of showers on the coast tomorrow. Victoria sitting at 9 degrees, 10 for a high in Vancouver. Edmonton also seeing 30% chance of showers tomorrow, 9 degrees. So they're dropping from 20 degrees down to 9. Calgary also seeing a bit of a drop in temperature there, as well as 30% chance of showers as that cold front is also moving through Edmonton and Calgary. As we get into the rest of the prairies here, we're seeing an opposite effect. We're actually seeing temperatures climb significantly. Saskatoon sitting at 18 tomorrow with clear skies, 17 for a high in Regina, and up to 9 degrees expected in Winnipeg tomorrow with a mix of sun and cloud. As we get into the central part of the country, Toronto sitting at 7 degrees, but lots of rain, 10 to 20 millimeters expected there. Same thing for Ottawa, 10 to 20 millimeters of rain, and by the afternoon you can mix a bit of snowflakes in with that rain. 6 for a high there, 8 for a high in Montreal with mainly cloudy skies there. As we get into Atlantic Canada, here's what's happening in the Maritime, 7 for a high in Fredericton, and seeing a 30% chance of showers. Same thing for Halifax, 30% chance of showers, 5 for a high there, 3 for a high in Charlottetown, partly cloudy skies, and 2 to 4 centimeters of snow expected in St. John's, and you can add a little bit of rain to that by late in the day, 2 for a high there. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
The head of grocery giant Empire says there is no evidence to suggest a grocery code of conduct would raise food prices for Canadians. Michael Medline says he would not support a grocery code of conduct for his industry if he thought it would make retail prices higher. Loblaw and Walmart executives said they would not sign the code as it was currently drafted, saying they're concerned it would raise food prices. The move has stalled progress on the code. McDonald's Canada says it is launching a limited-time remix menu. Canadians who've been experimenting with combining their favorite dishes will see some of their creations on the menu. Some examples include a chicken cheeseburger and a McFlurry with vanilla soft-serve ice cream, caramel sauce, and hot apple pie. Food experts say the customer-inspired menu comes from social media and a younger generation who are always looking for new and trendy products. Sales of Tesla vehicles were down close to 9% to start the year. Competition has been heating up while demand for electric vehicles continues to cool down. The Texas-based company says it delivered around 389,000 vehicles from January through till March. That is down from 423,000 sold in the same quarter of 2023. Sales also fell short of Wall Street expectations, as analysts said they expected the company to rise to 457,000 units for the quarter. A casino in Las Vegas closed its doors for good today after being in business for 67 years. The Tropicana used to be a hangout for the Rat Pack and other A-list celebrities, including Elizabeth Taylor and Debbie Reynolds. The city's third oldest casino is slated for demolition to make room for a new $1.5 billion baseball stadium. The Oakland A's are anticipated to make the move to Vegas in time for the 2028 season. It is part of the city's latest efforts to rebrand itself as a hub for sports entertainment. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 110 points on the day to finish at 22,075. The Dow was down 396 points to 39,170. The S&P 500 was down 37 on the day to 5205, and the Nasdaq was down 156 points to 16,240. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.71 to $85.42 US per barrel. Natural gas was up a cent to $1.85 US. Gold was up $29.23 on the day to $22.8067 US an ounce, and silver was up $1.06 to $26.14 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $8.27 per bushel, barley's at $6.35, canola's at $14.49, and corn is at $7.41 per bushel. Live cattle were up $1.70 to $181.78. Feeder cattle were up $3.08 to $243.50, and lean hogs were down 40 cents to $86.55. The Canadian dollar was down slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.70 US. Recapping one of our top stories, jury selection has begun for the three men charged in connection with the Coutts border blockade. Marco van Hugenbach, Alex van Herk, and Gerhard Janssen are each charged with mischief over $5,000. A number of supporters came out to the Lethbridge courthouse offering support for the three who were key participants in the 2022 government protest. Coming up, our weekly federal political update with Brian Lilly from the Toronto Sun. Mr. Lilly will discuss how our Prime Minister is getting angry with the amount of pushback he's been receiving regarding the latest increase in the federal carbon tax. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to send us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. Also, be sure to visit our website anytime to check out a number of stories and interviews. Life just got a whole lot more expensive for Canadians as the federal carbon tax went up 23%. We know many are struggling, but not so much with our MPs who received another pay raise April 1st. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, who joins us on location in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Toontown. Brian, welcome back to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Brian, tell me more about the two taxes the Trudeau government hiked and that pay increase for our members of parliament.
Yeah, of course, the carbon tax is the one that everyone's talking about, but it's one of many taxes this year that have gone up or will go up. So 23% increase. I had one reader from Ontario send me their natural gas bill, and out of a $198 bill pre-tax or pre-sales tax, there was a $52 charge just on the carbon tax. So 26% of the bill. Well, that's going to go up by 23%. Then you have to add on the HST. She's in Ontario, obviously. So that's another $6. It's going up to $8. That $52 charge, it's going to cost her $73 for the same amount of natural gas to heat her home after this tax increase. That's dramatic. And when you add on that, you add on the 2% increase on the excise tax for beverage alcohol, so beer, wine, spirits. That hits the restaurant industry. That hits the hospitality industry. And people that are still struggling, recovering from the pandemic still. And you've got payroll taxes that went up at the beginning of the year. CPP went up. EI went up. All kinds of other taxes being added on. We've got the May 1st increase in the airport security tax that the federal government's having. Who can afford all of these tax increases? And they always say, well, it's just a little bit. It's just a little bit. You add up a bunch of little bits and it becomes a lot. And not all of us are getting 4.5% pay raises the way MPs are. So a backbench MP with no other responsibilities goes from $194,000 to $203,000 in income. The Prime Minister goes up by $17,000 to $406,000.
Wow.
These are not the types of raises most of us are getting, and it's the federal government that's imposing all these tax increases. The carbon tax just being the biggest one, and the one that's being pushed back at by provinces across the political spectrum, even though Justin Trudeau keeps saying it's just conservative premiers. Wab Kinew wants it gone in Manitoba. Anthony Furey wants an emergency meeting out in Newfoundland. Nobody is happy with this carbon tax increase.
And the Prime Minister appears to be getting angry at all the pushback he's receiving on the federal carbon tax, Brian. And a number of Liberals are pointing to a letter from economists saying the criticisms, especially related to inflation, are unfair. Now, you argue it's the economists being unfair with their arguments. Can you explain?
Yeah, but because they are not being accurate, and I've seen this from several economists. One of them claiming on X that, oh no, the carbon tax isn't applied multiple times across the supply chain. Yes, it is. When the greenhouse grower is growing the vegetable, they're charged the carbon tax. When the trucker that picks it up to take it to the store picks it up or fills their tank, they're charged the carbon tax. The store has to heat parts of it, refrigerate others. They're charged the carbon tax. You take it home in your car, you're charged the carbon tax. All of those things add on to the cost of the goods that you and I are buying. And beyond that, what the economists cited to claim it was not impacting inflation was the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada's claim that it's 1/20th of the inflation rate is due to the carbon tax. That was debunked by Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, who asked a very simple question. How did you calculate that? And they said, well, we only look at the impact of the carbon tax on gasoline, natural gas, and home heating oil. Well, then you're not looking at the full impact of the carbon tax. Parliamentary Budget Officer has been clear. Most Canadians, when you consider the full impact of the carbon tax, are worse off rather than better off. That just the Prime Minister should stop getting angry at these facts, just accept them, and be proud of his carbon tax if he really wants it.
Now, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre continues to receive a whole lot of support at his Axe the Tax rallies across the country. What are the polls saying right now? How much have the Tories really increased their lead over the Trudeau Liberals?
Well, over the last little while, they have not. They've brought it up into the double digits quite a while ago. It's well over 6 months that they've had a double-digit lead over the Liberals. But let's see, we've got I think a Leger poll this week with 16-point lead, Nano's 15-point lead, Ipsos 18-point lead, Abacus 18-point lead, leading in every part of the country except Quebec. And interestingly, one of them, I'm forgetting which one, looking at too many polls, they're all very similar. In one of them, the Conservatives were tied with the Liberals in Quebec at 25% each, with the Bloc ahead at I believe 33. So even in Quebec, they're gaining momentum, according to some of the polls, but leading with every demographic group, every region of the country except Quebec, and on a message of Axe the Tax, which when he started this, a lot of the pundits said, oh, you can't run against the carbon tax. Well, I'd argue you can. Doug Ford did. He did that in 2018. He ripped it up when he took over from the Win Liberals. He's still campaigning against the carbon tax. And in fact, just today, held a news conference with 25 different stakeholder groups. It was about that. More than half of them were agriculture-based, talking about the impact of the carbon tax on them. And you go across this country, whether it's in Alberta where you are, in Saskatchewan where I'm sitting right now, in Ontario, elsewhere, talk to the farmers, talk to the retailers. They will tell you it's having an impact on them. It's having an impact on prices, which means it's having an impact on your budget.
Hey, Brian, let's talk about the school food program, which the Liberals say will feed an extra 400,000 kids across the country. Now, here in Alberta, we already have a school nutrition program. Other provinces have something very similar. Why this push for a national program? What's going on here?
This is an attempt by Justin Trudeau to show that he really just wants to be premier. It's also a sop to the NDP. It was one of the demands of the NDP that we have a national school food program. And they keep claiming, oh, well, so many other countries have it. We don't. We should have it. Well, we're a federation. We have confederation. The provinces are responsible for running these programs, and they do. 58,000 students fed by the Alberta School Nutrition Program. It's in the hundreds of thousands here in Ontario. In Ontario, where I normally am, most provinces have these already. And here's the bizarre thing, Hal. The Prime Minister announced this without speaking to a single premier or provincial government. You would think if your goal was to have a successful school food program, and the provinces already have them, you might call up the premiers or have your minister in charge of this program call up the provincial ministers in charge and say, okay, we'd like to put in $1 billion to help improve this. what do you have going right now and how can we help improve it? They didn't do that. So I spoke to several provincial governments after this announcement. I reached out to the Prime Minister's office. They all confirmed there were no talks, there were no consultations. And yet the Prime Minister says, we're doing this, thumps his chest, says he's giving another key demand to Jagmeet Singh for his coalition, and moves on. As one friend said to me, they're not interested in delivering a program. They're interested in delivering an announcement. And that's more important to them than actually feeding the kids, is saying you're going to feed the kids.
Apparently, there was also no communication between the feds and provinces in regards to the Renters' Bill of Rights. Let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah, same issue. Another program that is really provincial jurisdiction. When you're talking about real property, you're talking about landlord-tenant issues, you're talking about contract law. These are all provincial matters. And Justin Trudeau shows up and he says, we're going to have a Renters' Bill of Rights. We're going to have a single national standardized lease agreement between landlords and tenants. Well, wait a minute. You're not in charge of that. You have no legal authority to do that. And if you had talked to the provinces, there's probably common ground they could find on that. But just like with the school food program, he flew to Vancouver, didn't talk to a single premier. His ministers didn't talk to a single one of their counterparts, and says, we're going to do this. The guy is obsessed with being a provincial premier. He's not interested in foreign affairs. He's not interested in equipping our military. He's not interested in running the programs that the federal government is responsible for. He's interested in inventing new ones. Essentially, he wants to turn Alberta into Quebec in terms of Quebec should copy all the social programs. Well, just like the pharmacare program, provincial premiers are not interested in this. They're willing to talk. They're willing to see if there is common ground, but they're not interested in having Justin Trudeau come in and tell them, this is how you're going to do things. And that's from Danielle Smith to Francois Legault in Quebec, Doug Ford in Ontario, and any other premier. What are you doing meddling in our jurisdiction? You have a job to do. Go do it.
Brian, at the foreign interference inquiry, we heard testimony from the head of the Liberal Party that they were aware of international students who signed up for party memberships back in 2019 and said that's a normal way of doing business for them. What else have we learned?
The Liberal Party will let anyone who's 14 or over vote in a nomination race. And it doesn't matter if you're a permanent resident or a citizen of Canada, you can vote in the nomination race. So this all relates back to Han Dong, who will be testifying shortly at the inquiry as well, along with Michael Chan and others who are facing allegations that they were part of or victims of foreign interference in some way. So Han Dong's 2019 nomination in Don Valley West in Toronto is one of the ones that people point to. That was some of the big scoops that came out showing that there were busloads of young people, foreign students at University of Toronto, at Ryerson, different groups of people who were of Chinese ethnic origin, Chinese foreign students, told to sign up for the Liberal Party, told which candidate to back, bussed there. Those are the allegations. Allegations that the consulate for the People's Republic of China was involved in helping to do this, and in some cases paying for things like school buses. These are the allegations. It's a big part of why we're having a foreign interference inquiry. And the head of the Liberal Party said, well, this is how we do things. And in terms of allowing non-residents, non-citizens to vote in nominations. And at one point he said, well, nobody complained about it. None of the other candidates complained about it. Obviously somebody did. And we do know that the head of elections Canada raised this issue very early on. That's come out at the inquiry as well. So it's, what we're getting is confirmation of a lot of what was in the media previously, and also how little some people seemed to care.
Brian, the war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukraine, the invasion by Russia is just over 2 years right now, and many European nations have come to Canada because they do not want to support Russia, looking for our liquefied natural gas, our LNG products. They've approached Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's rebuffed many of these European leaders. We have a wonderful business opportunity as a nation to support a lot of these European countries and to beef up our GDP. What's going on here? Why did Trudeau say no?
Well, the latest was the Greek Prime Minister on a recent visit to Canada said, I'd love to be buying liquefied natural gas. Um, Look, we've got natural gas on both coasts. A lot of people think that we could only supply Europe by using liquefied natural gas from Alberta or BC or Saskatchewan fields. But we've got the ability to get natural gas out of places like New Brunswick or Nova Scotia. We could, cool that down, liquefy it, ship it to Europe. We're about to open the single lone export terminal in Kitimat. That's taken far longer than it should have. Um, and and there were several proposals for others on the West Coast. Whether it's the West Coast or the East Coast, Justin Trudeau and his government have said no. There was one that I thought was going to go through for sure called Energy Saguenay. And I thought it would go through because the plan was to take basically a spur line off of an existing pipeline that brings natural gas from Alberta fields to Ontario. And then just around the Ottawa area, put in a spur line that would take the natural gas up to the Saguenay region of Quebec, where there would be an export terminal built. The Trudeau government said no to that one. They'd given it favorable treatment previously, and then once Stephen Guilbeault came in, he even said no to that one. It is an ideological opposition, and we've heard this repeated ad nauseum by liberal pundits and liberal politicians, saying, "Well, this conservative idea." They always say it's a conservative idea. It's not. It's common sense. This conservative idea would raise Canada's emissions. Okay, yes, it would. But what it would do if we were exporting to countries that are still using coal, still using dirtier fuels to generate electricity, is compared to coal, natural gas burns at half the rate. So we could be cutting the rate in half of emissions in places like India, in China, for these power plants. And we're not doing it because they don't really care about global emissions. They care about shutting down the oil and gas industry. That is at the core of this. Stephen Guilbeault has an ideological opposition to it. Justin Trudeau has bought into Guilbeault's green zealotry. And until this government is gone, we will not have common sense on the energy file or the climate file.
Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilley, thanks so much for joining us today from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Thank you.
So how are things in southeastern Alberta these days? Well, we're going to chat about it today with our guest, Justin Wright, who is the new MLA for the Medicine Hat Cypress constituency. Welcome to Bridge City News, Justin. Thanks for being with us today.
Well, thanks so much for a great welcome. Anytime I can get on and talk about the great things in the charming constituency of Cypress Medicine Hat, I always look for an opportunity to talk about it. So
yeah, it's funny. Like I mentioned that you're new, but really it's been almost a year now. It was since last May. Yeah. So what, about 10 months?
Yeah, give or take 10 months. Right. It's been quite the learning experience.
I bet. Okay, so why don't we begin with the ongoing issue of affordability and inflation? So your constituency is fairly dependent on the oil and gas industry, and the carbon tax continues to increase, which impacts so many areas of the economy. So what kinds of feedback are you getting from people in your riding?
Well, the most common piece is they're just looking for it to end. And yeah. One of the first things that we did when we got in was pass a government motion requesting that Ottawa remove it from our home heating oils as a start. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get a unanimous vote on that. There was our opposition that did not vote in favor of that. But carbon tax is affecting everyday Albertans in everyday ways. And it continues to pile on. And I look at the cost when we talk about even just utility bills, the just exorbitant amount of cost that goes into that. It's an opportunity where if we really pulled that off as a country, if we stopped having that carbon tax, you would see our inflation and affordability crisis take a really big chunk out of what's plaguing everyday Albertans.
Oh yeah, and I mean, we're all feeling it, aren't we? 100%. And of course, the ability to purchase a home continues to be out of the reach for many Albertans. That's something else we've been talking about. So we do need to see an increase in the supply of affordable homes somehow, don't we? So any thoughts on changes needed to make that a reality?
Well, we have, I think, the right minister in charge of that profile with Minister Nixon, and we're already seeing positive changes to the market from a policy perspective. I'm just going to give a few stats and changes that we've seen here. So we've seen the most housing starts in January of 2024 since 2015. So that's really positive, good news. As well as we're seeing a 48% housing increase on starts since January 2023. So we're seeing a positive trend moving in the right direction to free up housing for our everyday Albertans, right? And these are really key metrics that show us that we're on the right trajectory and that we're going to keep pushing down this path to ensure that we have housing in line with the needs of Albertans. You know, as Alberta continues to be a destination both for immigration internationally as well as domestically, it's going to continue to be a need that we need to go after. And policies in place and red tape reduction have really begun to show the fruit of those initiatives, and I'm really pleased to see the uptick in the number of home starts that we've seen already, and look forward to continuing this path.
Okay, let's touch base on the drought conditions that we've been experiencing over the last number of years in southern Alberta. Justin, you're part of the Alberta Drought Committee. So what is being done to ensure that the ag sector pulls through this and that our municipalities have proper water supplies?
Yeah, you know, one of my colleagues from Tabor Warner likes to use the saying of whiskey is for drinking and water's for fighting. And right now that rings pretty true across Southeast Alberta and really the whole province. As part of the Water Advisory Committee, Minister Schultz has put together a large group or a large variety of backgrounds. So we have got industry representative, we've got Indigenous communities represented, we've got agri-food, we've got municipalities, we've got egg producers, you name it. They're irrigators. I missed irrigators, can't forget them. No. You kind of hit on it. It's really important. It's affecting every day. So it's been a absolutely remarkable opportunity to take the voice of the grassroots with this Water Advisory Committee, present it to the minister, present it to the Ministry of Environment and Protected Areas, to be able to really shape what policy would look like going forward. And the minister's already put in some remarkable programs like Water Smart, and they're continuing to evaluate what that looks like over the coming seasons, you know, because there's going to be a lot of impact as to what crops our egg producers are going to be putting in the ground, determined by the amount of water that's available, as well as looking at some of the different avenues, such as regulations around dugouts, regulations around on-water storage, are all topics of conversation that have been had part of the Water Advisory Committee. But you know, ultimately, the decisions fall right where they should, which is with the EPA ministry and Minister Schultz. They'll make the ultimate decisions as to what is best, and we do our best to get the voices of different industries, municipalities, Indigenous communities, and really roll them up to ensure that we've got the correct information in a timely manner to help the minister and her team make the right call as part of the drought response team.
Okay. Justin, your constituency extends all the way down to the U.S. border. Highway 3 is going to be twinned over the next few years, finally. So what about Highway 41 south? I'm told that it needs to be widened. Are there any plans to do that?
You know what? I appreciate you asking that question. Minister Dreeshen was just in the riding a few weeks ago and made an announcement that we are in the planning stages, as well as the partway to the engineering planning for a Highway 3 widening, or Highway 41 widening, in conjunction with the Highway 3 announcement. So what that's going to look like is approximately 52 kilometers from Highway 1. It ends up just going past Elkwater and Cypress Hills Provincial Park, where we are going to be having widening going on down that way, as well as 14 kilometers north of Highway 1 along Highway 41 between the 41 and 41A. That's really going to add to a lot of safety measures and concerns that have been going on down that way. Many of my constituents have had near misses, serious near misses on Highway 41, including my family. It's been something that's been very near and dear to me. I'm going to be continuing to focus on this because I think it's and just absolutely vitally important for both of our safety of our everyday constituents that are driving that road, going home, going to their ranches, but also for our tourism sector in the southeast corner. Elkwater and Cypress Hills provide a wealth of economic investment when it comes to tourism and people traveling down that road with RVs and boats and jet skis and all those great recreational pieces. If we can't do it in a safe manner, that's going to really impact what we see from a tourism perspective. And for myself, I sit on on a committee called PNWAR. It's the Pacific Northwest Economic Region. I'm one of the delegates. And we talk a lot about corridors, and I view Highway 41 very much as a very important corridor for trade because it has the potential to connect the U.S. with a direct north-south route, potentially all the way up to Fort McMurray, Cold Lake, Bonnyville area, and definitely the Oyen area where we're also seeing a lot of oil and gas development still going on.
Wow, okay, well, that's great news. Safety first, absolutely. Okay, so switching gears here, how is the aerospace and defense industry doing in Medicine Hat?
You know what, I don't want to use the word booming because I'm cautiously optimistic that very soon we'll be able to use that wording. But we are seeing such a massive uptick in regards to new starts going on in our region, specifically in aviation, aerospace, and defense. And, you know, I've been kind of floating the idea of trying to get an AAD corridor stretching from Medicine Hat to Edmonton. There's a lot of tech developers working in the aerospace realm in Edmonton, but there's a lot of rocket design, a lot of radar design going on in Medicine Hat, as well as drones. We have a great advantage with our foremost aerial drone range, and that allows for out of sight flying of drones. And we are the only location in Western Canada that has one of those. So it's providing a really key advantage that we can focus on to have this be one of those industries that could potentially backfill the gap that was left from the 2008 recession when we saw the vast majority of oil and gas pull out of the area. So this gives us an opportunity to have great paying jobs, high level of competency, and really take and birth something that hasn't really been in Western Canada, which is a aviation, aerospace, and defense industry. Often they set up and this gives us a brand new industry that we can focus on. And I am so proud that we've had so many of these new startups pick Medicine Hat as being their choice location to develop the great and amazing new technologies that are available out there.
Mm-hmm. Now, I understand that there's demand from some of these industries to see some upgrades to the Wild Horse U.S. border crossing.
Yeah, there's been a large push. This has been ongoing for a number of years, and I really appreciate the Premier's tenacity on this. Her and the governor from Montana actually wrote a joint letter asking both federal governments to explore this. We need a second commercial port in Alberta. Right now, Coots is the only avenue, and I hear pretty regularly that if we have manufacturers trying to get their parts and goods to market in the eastern side of the U.S., they're often having to backtrack approximately 3 hours to Coots to come back across if they don't want to go through Saskatchewan, just based upon timing. So if we can get the Wild Horse crossing, even a 16-hour crossing joint location, similar to what we would see in Coots, as well as commercial, it's going to give us the great opportunity to get those goods to market. But also when I look at last year's disaster, not what was it? It was a state of agricultural disaster that the Cypress County had declared. Getting feed up to Alberta was a big challenge for a lot of ag producers because they weren't able to cross at Coots. They weren't able to cross at Wild Horse. They had to drive to Coots, right. And that added an exponential amount of cost to getting that feed up there, where now it didn't become viable for many of them. And when we look, a lot of our manufacturers are saying that by going through Coots or going through Saskatchewan, it's adding up to 14% to their transportation costs. So they're looking at that as to how we can advocate to make sure that we're being responsible for this economic corridor, which is Highway 41, which is your main way from our area in the Medicine Hat region, all the way down into the States, taking you just out by Havre. And we're seeing that the Americans have already started making investments in their infrastructure on that side of the border. So we're continuing to evaluate and push for much the same thing.
Wow. Okay. Now, Justin, I believe that you're the provincial liaison with the military. So can you update us on where things are with the Suffield military base just outside Medicine Hat there?
Yeah, so with that, I've been in fairly regular contact with Lieutenant Colonel Anderchuk. They're continuing to evaluate the situation. You know, the British BATIS folks, there is still some stationed there. They're evaluating what the future looks like for them. But I have also spoken with Brigadier General Graham. He has expressed his commitment that CFB Suffield will be one of the jewels, remain one of the jewels of Canadian 3rd Division. And as we are continuing to keep our ear to the ground, we're very hopeful and optimistic for a very positive turn of events for CFB Suffield, as it's very important to our economic area from a perspective of, new people coming in, constant trade over. I look at a number of years ago when the British soldiers would do training exercises, the economic impact that brought to the community. As well as, we've got a really rich history of service down in our area. I look at the South Alberta Light Horse, which is often referred to as Medicine Hat's Regiment. It's a very important, rich history of really care and compassion to our servicemen and women that have been through this area in all of the great conflicts. So we're cautiously optimistic for what the future holds, but also in regards to what the future can bring in regards to a evolution of what goes on there.
Right. Now, you mentioned the British soldiers. Is there concern over the downsizing of the UK military presence there and how that could affect the economy?
There's always going to be concern when you see a large group of folks exit the area. However, I think with the current instability over in Europe, we'll say. I think that's a nice way of putting it. I completely understand why they're looking to position most of their troops much closer to home, especially their armor, just given the rapid response that may be needed should things escalate.
Well, Justin, it looks like we're about out of time here, but thanks so much for being with us today. Appreciate having you on.
No worries. Would gladly be back. Thank you.
All right. Justin Wright is the MLA for the Medicine Hat Cypress constituency in Alberta. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.